Conventions are the common features of a particular genre of media text. They help to define the genre and can signify this to the audience. I researched what the codes and conventions of my genre were before I started my documentary, and in this research I found a lot of information that helped me, such as Bill Nichols' 6 Modes of Documentary. I wanted to include as many typical conventions in my documentary as I could, such as voiceover to help draw in my target audience and to give it a familiar feel, but I also wanted to challenge these conventions. Out of Bill Nichols' 6 modes of documentaries, mine mostly followed the participatory mode. Bill Nichols described the participatory mode documentary as when the encounter between filmmaker and subject is recorded and the filmmaker actively engages with the situation they are documenting. I decided to choose this mode as I found it to best fit the topic that I decided to do, the history of rugby, and I found that this mode was perfect to take the audience through the history. Bill Nichols helped my great knowledge of what I could include in a documentary, and I tried to include a couple of different modes into my production. In my research, I also watched some of Einstein's work. This feature inspired me and led to me putting my own montages into my documentary. For my narrative structure, as I am doing it on history, I had a chronological timeline, starting from when it was first created, going up to the present. I found that this was the clearest way to provide the information to the audience. Watching the documentary Lucy helped with my understanding of what the structure in my documentary should be. To present the information to the audience, I used a narrator as it was the clearest and simplest way to inform the audience without confusing them. In my documentary, I attempted to make my narrator come off as the expert on the subject, and I did this by picking someone who had a clear voice, knew the facts, and could present them to the audience without belittling them. For my voiceover, I used David Attenborough as an example and tried to get the same tone and intensity that he brings to his documentaries. I tried to create a specific atmosphere using non-diegetic sounds. I used different audio clips at different points in the documentary to try focus on the meaning of it. For example, when I was editing my interviews, I put slow music over to get the audience to focus more on what they were saying and to convey the meaning across to the audience. I also tried using theories in my documentary. In my mise-en-scène, I used prop theory. For example, I placed my interviewees into a gym with equipment behind them to convey that they know the subject. My documentary also challenged conventions. Unlike most documentaries which have a preferred view behind it, mine is neutral because I wanted to let the audience decide the meaning and the point behind it. I also don't use close-up shots in my interviews because I feel like that would portray the emotion across to the audience and it will give it more of a preferred viewing. Representation in media studies is the way aspects of society such as gender, age or ethnicity are presented to audiences. In a paper by Kristen Arson, she argued that the audience is not seeing reality and are only seeing a recorded version of reality, though the true representations may not be caught on camera. In my documentary, I tried to keep all the representations as true to form as I could manage. As I had been around the world of rugby for a while, I felt like I knew how to represent the game and the players within. In all three of my productions, I tried to present the theme of teamwork as important to the players and to the game. I did this with several different team photographs, ranging from the start Rugby when it was first created to the present. I also represented rugby as a very physical and dangerous game, which I tried to convey through footage of the game and interviews with people who have played it. Rugby is also represented as a very patriarchal sport, since all my footage is of men playing the game, which is reinforcing a hegemonic stereotype that it is a men's sport. Also, I represented age in my documentary, since I only had footage of young men playing the game, and this can be seen through contrast with new footage that I filmed and the old archival footage where there is older men playing the game, showing that a lot of change has happened in the sport.